I don't know that we'll get a lot of questions today, but we might. And I'm interested in this topic greatly. Oh, he's already hit the live button. So hi, everybody. I think we've had about 20 or 25 people standing by, so they're watching us now. And if you've joined in early, hello, good morning. It's going to be another 6 minutes before we officially start. So you're just kind of behind the scenes. I just put my contacts in so I can see. I had some glasses on that I couldn't see a dang thing. I couldn't even see the guys on the screen, but now I can. So what's going on with you two, Billy? What's going on down there in Tennessee?
It's raining a little bit today, but we're staying steady. A lot of my peers that I've spoke with one yesterday. He's slammed. He's working Saturday and Sunday. I choose not to do that.
Good for you.
Yeah, yeah. We do enough to make a living and have a little bit left over at the end of the day. So
that's great. That's great. I was that guy. I used to work 7 days a week, 12, 13, 14, 16 hours a day. And boy, that gets old after a while.
It will age you for sure.
I probably hit that wall. We've got a unique way. I know that everybody's hyped up about bifurcation, bifurcated appraisals, but we actually been running that for a while now out of our Nashville office, and it works pretty well. So, Steve, what about you? What's going on in your world down there in Texas?
Same. Rain remaining steady. I'm surprised that you stopped working 7 days a week, because it seems like you have your hands in so many things that
I do. Yeah, I do. And I probably think about business models 24/7, or at least when I'm not asleep, and sometimes when I'm asleep. But what I started doing a few years ago, Steve, is I started building little teams, and I'm just getting old and tired and cantankerous. I just don't want to do it all anymore. So as a consequence, we give up a little of the fee that way, but that's okay. We can all make a little money. And so I'm building teams out in everything I do. It kind of makes you feel not quite as important, because, things can operate when you're not there, but that's actually a good
vacation, though.
That's actually a very good thing. I can leave my office and know that I don't actually have to physically close the office for a day or two or a week. I can actually leave, and the wheel is still turning. And I love that. I love that. So it's given me a little bit of a life again. I'm going to be coming down to Texas in August and lecturing at the ATA event. And I'm embarrassed to say I don't know where that's taking place at. but somewhere.
Well, as you know, or maybe you don't know, but I'm on the board, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know where it's.
You're not sure either. Teresa Walker's walking, thinking, "Oh my God, these guys are killing me," But anyway, I'll be in Texas in August, speaking at the Association of Texas Appraisers meeting. And maybe on the next broadcast in June, I will let the viewers know if you want to come hang out with that. Should be a good time. What else is going on? You guys are busy. You said you had breakfast, Steve. Billy, you didn't have breakfast. I feel sorry for you. I mean,
no. That's my typical routine.
Okay.
By the time I get stuff going in the morning and I'm out, it's almost lunchtime. So I just soon have lunch. Now, I was going to go by McDonald's this morning and grab something, but I decided not to. So I think those sausage McMuffins and biscuits every morning probably will pack on a little bit more weight than probably I need. So,
they will, I promise you.
My wife has gone to fruit.
Oh, nice.
That's probably the better option. So.
Yeah, it is. It is good. My office, right downstairs, we have a little deli. It's called Kobe's Deli. A shout out to those fine folks. It's excellent. And I just had a little sandwich from them. So I feel pretty good. But yeah, they have a quiche down there that I've been getting, and they have fruit that comes with it. And trying to do a little bit better. We're going to the Bahamas at the end of the month just for a quick trip.
Good for you.
Yeah. So
where are you staying at down there?
I have no idea. You'd have to ask Julie. I'm staying wherever she tells me to stay.
It's beautiful down there.
It is. Yeah, we took a cruise. We've taken a cruise the last couple of years, and that was one of the ports this year. And we just hung out for the day. We rented one of those big ATV things, and man, that was fun. We just drove around cranked up the music and drove around the island on these little these little side by sides and had a good time. Could drive them out on the beach. It was very cool. I want one of those, but you know, when you get something like that, how often do you really end up using it? You know,
Right.
I'd probably use it for hunting some. Speaking of hunting, I want to do that down in Texas. I have folks down there, Steve, tell me every time I'm down, well, come on back down. And I went on a hog hunt this year, and one of the guys with us got one. I didn't get one. And I was talking to some folks down in Texas when I was there, whenever I was there, a few months ago or 6 months ago. And they were telling me about the hog population down there. And so I need to find some time to come down there and do a little hunting. There's been some very gracious folks down there. So are you guys ready to go? I think it just turned 10 where I'm at.
I'm good.
Ready to go.
All right. So all of you watching, I know you've joined in a little early, and glad you're here. For those that are just clicking in, we're about to get started. Before we do, I want to make a quick little announcement and say I apologize for the scheduled webinar at the end of May. We had some glitches. Ben Maxwell, our main guy over at Appraiser eLearning, assures me it wasn't anything that he did. And we may hear a voice in a minute. I mean, that's Ben. He's telling me YouTube wanted to change their platform and decided to do it the day of our event that morning. And while he tried to work that out with the YouTube folks, we just couldn't get it done. So my apologies to all of you that were tuned in and ready to watch the webinar and we weren't successful with that. And that's the first time ever. Being a live broadcast, that kind of stuff can happen. Being a live broadcast, in fact, anything can happen. So we do like the format that it's not rehearsed or we have a script that we're reading. It's live. This is just a conversation amongst appraisers, and you're watching. And not only watching, you have the chance to participate. Good morning, appraisers. I'm Bryan Reynolds. This is the Appraisal Report webinar brought to you by the fine folks at Appraiser eLearning. This is brought to you normally the fourth Thursday of every month at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. This is a special edition, and we're bringing it to you as a makeup for our last fourth Thursday that did not go real well. So we apologize for that. We're back in business today. This session is being recorded, and if you're not able to watch it in its entirety, you can get over to YouTube. Click subscribe while you're there. Then you'll know about this one, which is not a normal scheduled webinar, and other special editions that we produce. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button while you're there. But you can go back to YouTube and watch this recorded version pretty much after we're done, or any of the other recorded versions. We also give you the opportunity to ask questions. So there's a little box over there on the side. You can type in a question, and we'll get to as many of those as we possibly can during the broadcast. And I need to pull mine up, Ben, because there we go. And so we're ready to go on that. Guys, I'm pretty excited today. We talk about doom and gloom all the time. We talk about, you got to be careful. You don't want to get a complaint filed against you. What happens when you get a complaint filed against you? We kind of have a little bit of a success story today, at least that's how I view it. And I'm excited that Billy has agreed to kind of join us today and tell his experience, tell what happened to him and what he did. We also have an appraiser that just recently wrote an article in Working RE magazine. It's a great article if you haven't seen it already. It's in this edition, whatever edition this is, but it's right here. So a special shout out to my guest right now, Mr. Billy Phillips, an appraiser out of the great state of Tennessee, a practicing appraiser working with us. And my other guest is Mr. Steve Kahane. He's a certified residential appraiser out of the great state of Texas. And here's the article he wrote. And we're going to dig into this a little bit. It's called My Complaints with Complaints. A very good article, by the way, Steve. Hey, Billy, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So before we kind of dive into the subject matter here, Billy, if anybody wants to reach out to you and have a conversation outside of the show, and Steve as well, Billy, how can one reach out to you and communicate with you?
They can email me at yourappraiser.tn, yourappraiser.tn steve@gmail.com, or they can simply call me at 423-599-9617.
Great. And Steve, if you don't mind sharing, if somebody wants to reach out to you, how would one get in touch with you?
Sure. My email is steve@ghaa.net.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so we've got two guests on today, and we're going to just kind of tag team and go back and forth a little bit. And Steve, people might want to reach out to you after I nominate you for something. I'm just kidding. but we're gonna have a conversation, because your article is, first of all, very good and very intriguing, very informative, and might have rallied the troops a little bit. I don't know. I hope so. So we'll get into that in just a second. But let's start with Billy. Billy, you're a practicing appraiser. That's what you do every day. Tell us kind of what happened here. You got notification that somebody filed a complaint against you, right?
Yes, sir. I performed a field review on an appraisal in our area from a wholesaler mortgage company. And Bryan, you can expand on that as much as you want. But a particular mortgage banker was trying to do a transaction, and I take it, and Bryan, help me out here, I take it that they were trying to sell that mortgage to a wholesaler, a bigger bank. And along that time period, that particular investor reached out to me to perform a field review of the initial appraisal.
So it wasn't the originating entity, right? It wasn't the people that made the loan. It was the entity that wanted to buy the paper or buy the loan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what's really interesting about this story, folks, is there's a high probability that if this bank had just shelved the loan, right, kept it in-house, as we call that, that there would have never been a review done. I mean, they went through the proper processing in the underwriting channels. They underwrote the loan. They closed the loan. And it wasn't till the time in which they packaged or bundled it and decided to sell it to a bigger bank, let's just say, right? That's when the red flag came up. And that entity that was interested in buying this note said, we want to do a review on this one. And so that's when they contacted you, Billy, and said, hey, take a look at this appraisal for us, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so I completed the review of the report. And in my review, I was very professional. And one thing that I would like to get across to a lot of appraisers out there, it's not our job to beat up or criticize that other appraiser, because each appraiser has their own opinions. And but I disagree.
Hey, I want to echo that real quick. You know, for the reviewers out there watching, or investigators for that matter, you need to keep in mind that our job as a reviewer or investigator, or someone that's critiquing that report, the definition of a review is developing an opinion about the quality of another appraiser's work, not developing another opinion of another appraiser. So it's a real pet peeve of mine when you say the original appraiser didn't do this. Well, how do you know what the heck they did? You don't. So be careful in your review reports that you don't say the other appraiser did this or the other appraiser didn't do that, because you really don't know what they did or didn't do. What you need to do is say the original appraisal report contains, or the original appraisal report doesn't contain. Your review is the report, not the other appraiser. Go ahead, Billy. I'm sorry to interrupt.
And also another thing I'd like to touch on is who the appraisers that are performing appraisal reviews. Remember, when you perform an appraisal review, if you disagree with that appraisal report, you need to supply evidence along with your review. In essence, you're performing an appraisal. And anyway, we'll get down to really what happened.
So I think it's simple to say that there were some issues with that original appraisal report that you came up with a different opinion. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so that was sent in to your client,
Yes, sir.
and consequently somebody didn't like that. And clearly when somebody orders a review, the client, they have the liberty to utilize the results of that review or put more reliance on the original appraisal report. It's their decision. Or they could get another review. You could get another review, or you could get a review of the review if you'd like.
Right.
So fast forward a little bit. You got notification that someone filed something at the state.
Yes.
Who was that? Was that the new bank that hired you to do the review?
No, it was the borrower.
All right. So the borrower got suddenly upset and filed a complaint. What
Yes.
happened from there?
That's why I liked Steve's article so much,
Yeah.
because in a lot of ways, as soon as you get that certified letter in the mail, you go into meltdown, and you go through the phases that Steve talked about in his article, the depression. Are they going to pull my livelihood, out from under me? Because I have been to plenty of classes, and one of our instructors in Knoxville, he told me 15 years ago, who I'm sure, Bryan, I will not mention his name, but he said that in his opinion, there's not an appraisal report that goes out the door that you could not prove violates USPAP in some form or fashion. Now, you may disagree with that, Bryan.
Well, I think we can all agree, and maybe we'll get Steve's point on that. I think we can all agree that someone can be very, very critical of another one's report. People refer to it as, somebody can pick your report apart, and whether or not, it is a specific violation per se, we certainly think that someone could scrutinize anyone's report if they look hard enough. Steve, what's your experience on that? You think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, but I get one of the other things, I guess, that to echo what you were saying about the review, I do a word search for the word appraiser and try to remove that and change it to appraisal to make sure that I'm never talking about the appraiser, that I'm only talking about the work product.
Man, I knew he was smart, Billy. That's a great idea, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, and it's easy to do, it just takes a minute. But I think as far as one of the things I love in USPAP, I mean, there's some things obviously I'm not as fond of, but I love that there's that statement in there that says that no report is perfect. Perfection is impossible to achieve. You have to, they accept that you're going to make some errors. And how many errors are sufficient to diminish credibility? That's a subjective thing. And because everyone has their own method of doing an appraisal, it's easy to be critical if someone else's method or product looks different. But that doesn't mean that it's either not credible or that it's not USPAP compliant.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I'm just trying to pull this up real quick. While I'm looking for this, Billy had mentioned a moment ago, and he said your article touched on it, that a lot of the complaints that are filed are based on the number, right? You have a disgruntled person. What's been your experience on that? Would you say that there's a high percentage of what you see that is based on the value opinion?
So personally, I don't have a lot of experience. I've helped some people defend against a complaint. And I noticed that every single one of those was based on value, contention about the value. So that's what got me interested in researching this. And so on the appraisal subcommittee website, it has the state agencies for each state and how to reach them. So I reached out to everyone that had contact information available and asked them for a breakdown of what percentage of their complaints were filed by unintended users, meaning that it wasn't the client in the report, but it was one of the unintended users, the buyers, the sellers, the real estate agents involved. And the majority of every state that kept track of that data said that the majority of complaints were filed by unintended users. And I have no data to support this, but why else would an unintended user file a complaint? they've never even heard of USPAP before.
Right, right. They're mad because they didn't get what they wanted. I mean, that's what it boils down to. I'm mad at this guy, and I'm going to retaliate. And that's why I like Billy's story. We're going to get to the rest of that in a minute. That's why I like Billy's story, is because he became proactive instead of just being, in defense mode. He became proactive, and I'm excited to share the rest of his story with our viewers. I'm going to share a screen real quick, if I can do this correctly, and hopefully I can. Can you see my screen up there now? If you're seeing my screen down here at the bottom, I'll highlight. You can see this is the USPAP 2018-19 edition. And I'm just highlighting what Steve shared with everyone a moment ago. This is the comment section, and this is actually under Standard Rule 1-1C. It's line item 450 for those of you that have your USPAP book and is following along with me right now. It simply says perfection is impossible to attain and competency doesn't require perfection. Now, it does go on to say that doesn't give you free rein to make all kinds of mistakes that you want. You can't be careless or negligent. But this is huge. Perfection is impossible to attain and competency does not require perfection. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the new changes to USPAP are going to be coming up January 1. Now, the interesting thing about that statement, if you wanted to get really, really technical, it is housed under Standards Rule 1. I just showed you that, right? 1-1C. Well, I guess if you play devil's advocate and use on the other side, you could say, well, that means in the development, you don't have to be perfect, but by God, your report better be perfect. So the foundation's doing a good thing for you and I. Are you ready? They're going to be moving that statement out of Standards Rule 1, and they're going to be moving it over to the competency rule. So it covers all of USPAP, which is really a great thing for you and I. And it's there for a good reason, in that we aren't perfect. I mean, we teach our kids practice makes perfect, and we really need to stop that, because there's no such thing as perfection. We really ought to teach our children practice makes better. So I just want to bring that back up and show the reference, because Steve talked about that a moment ago, and I think it's a great statement. Now, we're going to talk about some of Steve's recommendations in a moment, because that fascinated me, and I think that's where we need to rally the troop. But let's get back to Billy's story. So, Billy, you get the complaint. You have some sleepless nights. What did you do after you thought, hey, this is real and it's not going away? I need to do something. What did you do?
Well, the very first thing I did was call the bank that was actually originating the loan, and I got in touch with the highest of the high in that particular organization and said, hey, did y'all file a complaint against me? And he said, no, we didn't. And I was like, okay, well, this complaint was originated from an email from your organization.
Yeah.
And I said,
and let me just chime in here real quick. Billy, I know you're in a situation where you got to be careful with what you say on the air today. And I certainly don't want you to go too far or exceed anything. And our viewers will understand that a little bit later when we talk about what happened, the rest of the story. But, you be as specific as you want, or be as invasive as you want. And our viewers will understand that when we get to the end of the broadcast. But go ahead.
So the first thing I did was reached out to you. After that, I contacted you, and in the process of talking to you, I wrote my own rebuttal. And then after I talked to you, I contacted my attorney, and I gave my rebuttal to you and my attorney, and y'all laughed at me, really.
No, we didn't really laugh at you.
Yeah, my rebuttal was like 3 pages long.
Yeah.
And y'all were like, no, we need to cut this down quite a bit.
Yeah.
And we responded to the state in kind with a very short statement that you help write, and it was good. And going back to what Steve says, and I'll reiterate this to anyone, I don't care if you're an electrician, you're a HVAC, a contractor, never try to handle a regulatory board without an attorney and a consultant. You do it on your own, you're making a large mistake.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that we recommend, and I had Craig Capella on. He's an attorney that helps appraisers well. Tim Anderson does as well. I do as well. And one of the things that we talk about is, the first thing you need to do is try to remain calm. And it is like Billy said a moment ago. It's really an emotional strain on you. You're out there trying to do the right thing, and now somebody is questioning your integrity. And as Steve said, we all make mistakes, and gosh, if we look at you, maybe you've done some things, so it's easy to make a mistake, but it really is tough when somebody questions your integrity like that, and you can lose sleep and whatnot. So stay calm. Call your E&O, call an attorney, call a consultant if you want. I know I talked to Billy's attorney at great length, and your attorney did do a great job. So fast forward a little bit more, and don't give the whole surprise away here. Let's just talk about the complaint. After you sent your rebuttal in, what happened as a consequence of that complaint? Were you disciplined? You have to take a class? Did you lose your license? What happened?
The state sent me a letter. In summary, said they found no violation of use patent in my work.
Congratulations. So no violations means no discipline, right?
Right. Yeah, I was cleared.
Oh, that's fantastic. So they dismissed the case. So let's pause right there and go back to Steve for a minute. Steve, in your experience or folks that you've talked to that have experienced this, what would you say, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but what would you say the percentage is of cases that are dismissed versus the cases that get some sort of disciplinary action? I don't mean a letter of warning. I mean where they've actually, made them take a class or pay a fine or something like that.
So Texas actually tracks those stats, and they're all published online. In fact, most of this information for all states is available online. And if you don't see it readily, it's available through a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request. But Texas publishes it, and it generally ranges between 25 and 33% of the complaints warrant some sort of disciplinary action.
Okay.
And that sounds like a lot, but it's still a small number of appraisers because they publish two numbers. They publish the numbers that respond or that turn out to be disciplinary actions, and then they publish a separate number to make it look better of what percentage that is of Texas appraisers, which is a really tiny percentage.
Right.
But when you look at it like, well, if you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting a disciplinary action if you get a complaint, those aren't odds that anyone wants.
Right. Yeah. That gets your attention, because my luck, I'd be that one. Right. And I would venture to say that's probably a relatively low percentage if we compared to other states, because I know a lot of states, the percentage is very high. I mean, I've had regulators tell me that, man, if a complaint gets filed against you, they're probably going to find something. Now, maybe they just have really aggressive, boards or aggressive investigators or whatnot. But it's like Billy and you both said, we all make mistakes, and boy, if they're really trying to find something, they typically can. And so let's talk about that for a minute. Sometimes a complaint comes in, and they say, hey, I think Steve got my square footage wrong. And that's the whole complaint, right? Steve misrepresented the size of my home and inadvertently appraised it lower than he should have because my house is bigger, by gosh. Let's say the investigator goes out and they look at that property. Maybe they measure it. And by gosh, Steve got the square footage right. And the size of a house, the square footage is a fact, isn't it? It's not an opinion. It's a fact. It's only one size. And so the homeowner was using an improper technique, or maybe the homeowner was including the basement or an unfinished attic or something, right? Well, that area, you'd use it. You just got to pull down a drop stair to get there, right? Well, we don't count that area. So my point is, the findings are, with the alleged violation, is that Steve didn't misrepresent. Right? He didn't do any deficiencies in the square footage. Now, why doesn't the process stop right there, Steve? I mean,
Good question.
The allegation was you messed up on the square footage. We find out that you didn't. You did okay. Shouldn't it just stop right there?
That would be my belief too, but that's not the way it works.
That's not the way it works. So now they're going to say, well, Steve, you got the square footage right, but you didn't put your support and rationale for your highest and best use, which is a violation of Standard Rule 22A, Roman numeral 10. And you didn't make your extraordinary assumption clearly and conspicuously. So we're going to get you for 22A 11, I believe that is. So let's talk about that. Why do they go on a witch hunt, if you want to call it a witch hunt, of your every possible, dot the I, cross the T?
So each state is regulated by the appraisal subcommittee. They do audits of each state's regulating agencies. And one of the things they require, it's outlined in something called Policy Statement 7. And it says that when there's a complaint filed, they're supposed to look beyond the complaint to see if there's other additional USPAP violations. And in theory, and one of my complaints with this is that if all this is supposed to help maintain and promote public trust, the public who filed that complaint, they weren't aware of my insufficient highest and best use development. They don't even care about it. They don't even know what it is.
Right.
So how does that promote the public trust?
Right, right.
But they're required to look beyond the original complaint, to look at the entire report, the work file, and all the related documents.
Right.
And so, Steve, I would, if you could expand on a little bit of part of that article that you wrote about the barking dog.
Yeah, which, by the way, so Bryan, kudos to you to ask Jim Park that very question about Policy Statement 7. If you guys missed it in another eLearning webinar, Bryan had Jim Park on. Is he the chair of the appraisal subcommittee?
Yeah, he's a real important guy. I don't know.
Yeah. And you asked him that very question, what happens? Why do you look beyond that? And he actually used the example from my article. If a neighbor calls the police on you for loud music and the police show up, not only do they check the volume of the music at your house, but you're now, because of the way Policy Statement 7 works, you have to open up your door, invite them in the house to look for other violations that they might find. Open up your filing cabinet, let them look through your files. And again, it exceeds whatever the original concern was by the aggrieved party.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the things that maybe Jim had said is, if you open the door and you're answering that to the officer and he sees a dead body laying in there, that's probably going to prompt him to come in and have a conversation, maybe even pull out his gun, that kind of thing. But that's an indication of, hey, we've got a crime, or we've got an issue over here, and now that brings a red flag.
What's the difference between probable cause and no probable cause?
Exactly.
Police officers have to have probable cause, but the legal justice system is different than the administrative justice system.
Regulatory system. Right.
Yeah, and so those rules don't apply to us.
So let's talk about part of your article there when you I'm just going to read a little snippet here, and we're talking about Policy Statement number 7. So let's just bring that up right now. One of Steve's recommendations is, let's get rid of Policy Statement 7. Address only the complaints, specifically the allegations. If the allegations have no merit, let the complainant know, but leave the rest of the appraisal alone. So with that recommendation, Steve, how do we, or how do appraisers watching, how do we get involved to get that changed? I mean, this is not a state by state issue. This is a national issue that, as you mentioned, the appraisal subcommittee kind of makes or nudges the states to look at your entire report. So if we wanted to start a movement right here today on this broadcast, and we have viewers watching that say, yeah, let's do this. How do we start? How do we do that? Let's make some change here.
That's a good question, and I wish I had an answer for you. I was actually hoping you could answer that for me.
As you said, I got a lot going on, so I'll be right beside somebody, but we need somebody to lead this charge.
I don't know if the best way to do it is to contact the appraisal subcommittee. I don't know if you can do it by contacting your local congressman or your state senator, go through it that direction. I don't know what the best approach is. Those would be my first two thoughts, but I don't know.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would recommend is anyone watching that thinks kind of like Steve and I, frankly, and I believe Billy as well, that really the allegation or the complaint should just be investigated from the standpoint of what the alleged violations were. And I've had folks, smart people, say, well, Bryan, the reason why we make the states do that is because the public doesn't know. They file a complaint. They thought Steve got the square footage wrong. They don't know about the other things he's supposed to be doing. So we're kind of a checks and balance of that. But my position on that is nothing prevents a member of the public or whomever is making that allegation against Steve or his report to hire somebody to do a review on it. You know, for instance, I could say, hey, Steve appraised my house. I know he's got the square footage wrong, but I want to see what kind of mistakes Mr. Steve made. So I'm going to hire a local appraiser and say, hey, will you take a look at Steve's report and tell me, because maybe I'm just overreacting. I have an emotional issue here. It's my house he messed up on. At least I think he messed up on. And I want to challenge that. Can I hire you to be another set of eyes? And if you come back and say, no, Bryan, you're wrong, Steve didn't do anything wrong, I'm not going to file a complaint against him. But by gosh, if he did do something wrong, I'm going to let his regulatory agency know that. So you have that ability. So I don't know.
If I could chime in,
Absolutely.
I also think that it is unfortunately skewing in my particular state. I took a class through the Appraisal Institute, and one of the instructors was a board member, and he said the majority of the complaints that are coming through in our state is for low value.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen, and yesterday, perfect example, I had an order. I had a request to do a single family residential home in a subdivision where I had just completed another house in the same subdivision, one house over, in April. And I saw the sales price of this request and I turned it down. Mm-hmm. I didn't take the order just for the simple fact that I knew that the house was, in my opinion, overpriced, and I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to haggle with the people that are involved in the transaction. I didn't want to haggle with the possibility that somebody could turn me in and file a complaint because they felt like this house was priced well. I just don't. It's getting to where, in my opinion, go ahead.
Yeah, it's sad if we have appraisers out there that are nervous or intimidated by taking assignments because they're like, man, what's going to happen on the backside of this? And what might even be scarier than that is, are there appraisers out there that are taking those assignments and saying, man, I've got to make this number because I have a target on me if I come in low? Well, guys, be careful doing that, because if we have another housing crisis, guess who they're going to be looking at? You, and they may be coming after you. So it's tough. It's really tough out there. We've got a couple of statements. Ed says that would be fair if the state did that. Quit looking for dead bodies. Tim A. From Florida says, amen to the elimination of policy statement number 7. Tim also said that in Florida, about half of the complaints do not get out of the probable case committee. That means that the appraiser is not formally charged. However, that also means that about 50% actually go in front of the board. I want to talk about agreed orders for just a minute. And then Billy, we're going to get back to you. But hey, before we do that, we're actually unbelievably already at the halfway mark. And I'm going to do something for the 50, 60, 70 people watching right now as a thank you. And also because we had that hiccup last month. Billy, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. Go UK. Go Cats. Go. Steve, what is your favorite number?
7.
7. All right, Ben Maxwell, blue 7. Blue 7. Code blue 7. Ben Maxwell, blue 7. So what we're going to do for everyone watching as a thank you for participating today, as a thank you for bringing us into your little box and watching, and as a way to say we're sorry for last month hiccup. Right now during this broadcast only, we're going to offer a 20% discount on any of our classes from Appraiser eLearning. And the code that you will use to capitalize on that is Blue 7. If Ben hasn't activated it yet, he will in just a second. Blue 7 is the discount code. Even if you don't need a course right now, go ahead and buy that course, use Blue 7, get 20% off, and you can come back and use that course later. In fact, if you need 2 courses or 3 courses or 4 courses, this discount code will work. So check out Appraiser eLearning, appraiserelearning.com. Look at the course you want to take. We've got a course on CYA, kind of the topic matter that we're having today. Tim Anderson's got a course on adjustments. Josh Wallet has a course. We have several courses out there. Blue 7 is a discount code that will work for the next 30 minutes only. So don't shut us down. Just bring up another screen, get on Appraiser eLearning, pick out the course or courses you want. Use Blue 7 for an incredible discount. That being said, this is the Appraisal Report webinar brought to you the 4th Thursday of every month. It is being recorded. It is available right after this broadcast. These are housed on YouTube. So when you're on YouTube or as you're watching me right now, go ahead and hit the subscribe button because we have special webinars. And just like this one, we have special webinars that occasionally will come up that you're going to want to participate in. These webinars are not scripted. They are live. Anything can happen, just like last week happened, and we weren't able to go on. And we've got several folks booked. We've got Peter Christian coming up, who is the attorney for LIA Insurance. You're not going to want to miss that. He's going to talk about appraisers that get in trouble, ways to avoid getting in trouble, what to do if you do get in trouble. So we're tickled to death that he's coming on. But back to our special guest today, Billy and Steve. So, Billy, let's go back to you and let's talk about the rest of your story. So to recap everybody, if someone just joined in, Billy got a complaint. He's a practicing appraiser, boots on the ground appraiser, just like most of you watching. Billy got a complaint on an appraisal review report that he had done. The complainant wasn't his client, wasn't an additional intended user. It was the borrower. All right. So Billy hired a consultant. He hired an attorney. I don't know if you got your E&O insurance involved or not, but nonetheless, he dealt with the complaint. You've got to deal with it. It's not going to go away. So he dealt with it, and luckily he had high success with that. They actually dismissed all the charges. So Billy, that had to make you feel really good. You probably celebrated after that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it took probably about 6 months before I received notification of that.
All right. So 6 months you were on kind of walking on eggshells, not knowing what was going to happen. You finally get word in that, hey, it's dismissed. It's over. It's out of your life. Congratulations. What'd you do after that? What did you decide to do?
I decided to file a complaint in civil court or sue pretty much all parties that were involved in the transaction.
Wow. So you really decide, and that can cost money, and you could lose. You could lose. So you're going to spend money and potentially years of your life suing someone, and you might not win. So tell us about that process. I guess you got an attorney, or you used your same attorney, and you filed suit. How long did that take, and what was the outcome?
I think it took about 11 months. We could have gone to trial with it. But in a lot of cases, as you see, parties come to the table and negotiate to try to remedy the case before it goes to trial. So it was settled out of court.
Yeah, and most cases these days, I believe I read a statistic, and this was really amazing, but I think it's probably a pretty good stat. It said 90 to 95% of cases end up settling, which is incredible. But the reason that happens, folks, is when you're suing or being sued, you never know what's going to happen until it happens. In other words, judges and juries are unpredictable. I mean, everybody thought OJ was going to be found guilty. Everybody thought Casey Anthony was going to be found guilty. They weren't, right? So juries and judges are unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. So, they many times will come back and say, what's it going to take to make this thing go away? So what happened with you? And I know you might not be able to be super specific, but you guys started negotiating in lieu of actually going into the courtroom, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And did a settlement occur? I assume.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
And was that in your favor?
Yes.
Were you happy with the settlement?
Yes, I was very happy.
Very good. It was worthwhile of you taking the 11 months out of your life to pursue this.
Yes, and I would suggest to anyone, if it's a baseless complaint and it's only retaliatory, just because this appraiser didn't get my value or whatever it may be, go on the offense. Don't just basically cower down, and once it goes away, you're like, whoo. Because I had people who I respect told me, hey, Billy, just let this go away. And I was not going to do that. And I suggest to any appraiser that's watching today, if you did something wrong, say you did something wrong, move on. But if you didn't do anything wrong and you can prove it, then do something about it. Because in today's times, we have to fill out all this paperwork to get on new clients' panel. If you check you've had a complaint in the last 5 years, a lot of times you're not going to go on that panel,
right?
Even though it might have gotten dismissed.
Right. And so I'll just say, Billy, I like your style. Okay. And that's not because you hired me and paid me to help you out, but that helps. But the fact that you didn't take this laying down, you said, wait a minute, wait just a minute. I didn't do anything wrong. This is somebody that's trying to get me in trouble when I didn't do anything wrong. So first I've got to deal with that. First I have to take care of that and get that out of my life. But after that, I'm coming after you, right? And the thing that I like about this is not just the success of you putting something in your pocket, whatever that was. I mean, you were happy with whatever it is you put in your pocket, and congratulations. But not only that, I think you let the world know, hey, if you come after me, I'm going to first defend myself, and then I might turn right around and come after you. So be careful when you start throwing those rocks, because I might start throwing rocks back and mine might be bigger, right? So I like that. That's a great story. We've got a lot of comments and questions coming in. Before I get to some of those, Steve, let's talk about agreed order. Billy just said something that was fantastic. He said, if you did something wrong, have the courage to say, you know what, I screwed up. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I won't ever do it again. What do I need to do, to pay the price? But what I heard that he didn't really say, but I heard it, don't accept discipline when you didn't do anything wrong. Don't agree to be disciplined and have that check mark of you know that you're a bad guy, you did something wrong if you didn't do anything wrong. And so many appraisers are so intimidated and scared and emotional and, oh my God, I just want this out of my life. Where do I sign? Because some of these regulatory boards will say, well, you know, Steve, if you just sign this piece of paper right here, right? This is called a consent order or an agreed order. And if you just sign on the line right there, all we're going to do is make you take one class and charge you $250, and this will all go away, right? Should appraisers just automatically sign those consent orders or agreed orders and make it go away and get on with their business and their life? Or should they fight this thing?
Well, that's why, yeah, they should fight it. But what you were saying earlier about, you know, kind of taking a deep breath and talk to somebody. You know, I think in the article I mentioned hiring, there are consultants, there's folks like you, there's other people who specialize in this, who have experience, who can recognize, you know what, you might need to take a few lumps on this. On the other hand, they might say, you know what, you definitely need to stand up and fight for yourself. And usually there's consultants, but there's attorneys who deal with this stuff too. But most attorneys, especially those that might be covered by your E&O, they know the law. They don't know USPAP. They don't know appraising. They're unfamiliar with the jargon, with appraisal methodology. So that's where it really helps to hire a consultant as well, someone who can kind of bridge that gap. And between the two of them, you should have enough representation to avoid having to just feel like you're overwhelmed by the man kind of intimidating you.
Yeah, you know, so I was an investigator for a few years for the state of Tennessee, and I investigated a lot of cases, and it amazed me how many folks would hire an attorney. But as you said very eloquently, attorneys know the law. They typically don't know what we know. You know, they don't know what USPAP is. Now some do. There are some exceptions. I mentioned Craig earlier and Peter, and so they're around this every day. They do this stuff. In fact, I bumped into Peter out in Salt Lake City, and he said, "Bryan, I took your class," and I said, "Oh, you took a class from Appraiser eLearning?" He said, "No, I took your class." I'm like, "Oh, don't critique me too much." but you know, and it was funny. Ben was saying, "Bryan asked me an appraisal question." I said, "Great, Ben. What's the 4 economic influences that create value?" And he's like, "Ask me another question." And sorry, Ben. And Craig Capello was standing there, and he's not an appraiser; he's an attorney. And Craig rattled him off that quick, and I was like, "Craig," and Craig said, "Bryan, we've got to know this stuff. You know, I'm trying to help appraisers. So Peter and I take these classes. We've got to know the jargon." And so I admire that. Now, these are two attorneys that specialize in this line of work. But if you're just calling your attorney, your contract attorney, or your family law attorney or something like that, they probably don't understand USPAP. So they probably do need a consultant to help guide them through this process. I investigated many cases where, you know, that's my phone ringing. I'm sorry. That happened the other day. And I'm not going to answer it. I almost did, but I'm not going to. So we, I'm sorry, that distracted me. Live. That's the beauty about a live show, isn't it? But go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
Well, one thing that's probably worth mentioning. So if you call your E&O company, they often have a panel of appraisers. But those, attorneys, but those attorneys are not necessarily familiar with appraising. That doesn't mean that you're required to stay within that panel.
Yeah.
How they reimburse you may depend on whether they're on the panel or not. It's almost like, you know, any other insurance. It might be only 80% that they cover. But if they only cover 80% of you getting a good attorney as opposed to one that's on their panel who isn't familiar with appraisals, I'd definitely go for that, you know, better attorney with a much higher likelihood of helping you.
Yeah, and this is a conversation you need to have with your carrier and maybe your attorney. There was a case that I was hired as an expert, and the appraiser was being sued. The thing about this was the poor appraiser. There was some issues with the house, and the borrower wasn't filing a complaint, was suing them, right, in civil court. And so they didn't sue the seller, they didn't sue the listing agent, didn't sue the selling agent, didn't sue the home inspector, they sued the appraiser. So appraisers, quit putting a copy of your E&O policy in every appraisal report. I highly recommend you quit doing that, because they're looking for the big fish out there. And so they sued this appraiser. They brought me in as an expert. They had the attorney, they had a structural engineer, and I'm just counting, dollar signs. Oh my gosh, I got to pay this, pay this, pay this. What are they probably going to do? They're probably going to offer a settlement of some sort, and it's frustrating, but sometimes the finances do come into play. The agreed order, I would be careful in just signing, guys. If you've made a mistake and you want to consent to that, then by all means, that's a business decision. But if you didn't do anything wrong, don't accept responsibility. Don't, for crying out loud, be disciplined for something that you didn't really do anything wrong. Be careful with that. So let's read some of these comments that are coming in. We've got comments, we've got questions. All right. So Mark says there's a California case, Tyndall versus Murphy. Borrowers on a purchase sued appraiser. Appeals court dismissed it because the borrower was not an additional intended user. Can this set a precedent nationally or only in California? And I want to say, Mark, that we're not, no one here today are attorneys. So that's a great question for an attorney. But I'll tell you my guess that would not set a precedent nationally. That would set a precedent in the state of California. However, my good buddy Craig Capella, who's an attorney, I believe, had indicated you could reference that. And again, we'll have Craig back on another time, or maybe we can have Peter on and answer that question as well, because we're not attorneys and certainly don't offer any legal advice. That's outside the realm of what we do. Ed says, you are all awesome. Well, thank you, Ed. That's very nice. You are all awesome and very appreciated. Thanks for the info and your time. You should rename your show the Appraiser Guardian Angels. Hey, I like that. AGA, Appraiser Guardian Angels. Ed, thank you for those kind words. We appreciate you being here today and watching. And by the way, if you didn't hear me earlier, we're offering a discount. You got about 10 minutes left. We'll extend it to 15 minutes. What the heck? I'm in control. Blue 7. If you need any CE, get on Appraiser eLearning.com. Check out any courses you want. Use a discount code of Blue 7. We don't normally do that. We've never done this, guys. I'm doing this as a thank you to our viewers. I'm doing this as I'm sorry that our scheduled webinar in May did not happen. Thanks, YouTube. It's your fault. But if you use a discount code Blue 7, and I just made that up, blue is Billy's favorite color, 7 is Steve's favorite number, and that's how we came up with the code just now off the cuff. Blue 7 will get you a 20% discount on any or all of our courses. So check them out, sign up for however many you want, and be sure you get that nice, super sweet 20% discount only for about another 10 to 12 minutes. Helen says, Cooper versus Bakura. Borrower is not intended user. Interesting. So I assume that's, I don't have a lot in info on that. I'm not familiar with that, but I will check it out. And for all our Florida folks, they might want to write that down. Cooper versus Bakura, maybe Brakora. Tim Anderson might know a little bit about that. Chronic says, here's some questions. Chronic says, how did you get the notice of complaint? How did it make you feel when you got it? I imagine I would panic. Billy, that's for you. How did you remember back? All right, I know it's been a little while. Number one, how'd you get the notice? Number two, how did you feel when you first got that notice?
The first thing I noticed was the state emailed me a copy.
They emailed.
Okay. And then it was a follow-up 4 or 5 days from a certified letter in the mail.
So first they email you and they say, hey, we want to get this to you right away. Here you go. Here's an email. And then they send you a certified mail where you had to sign for it, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, gosh, so let's go back to and think about this for a minute. This horrible situation ended up ending on a positive note for you, but Think back to when you first got that and you got that email. I mean, you probably had appointments to look at or things to do that day. And how did that change your day? I mean, how did you feel?
I'll be honest with you, I probably didn't work for 2 days.
Wow. Wow.
And I know I didn't eat for a good day.
Right.
And it unfortunately it affected, because we went on vacation the next month, but we went to Miami Beach that next month. It affected my vacation because it was just constantly. I'm a warrior anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just constantly on my mind. You woke up to it, went to bed with it, and it took such a long time to finally get resolved that it took a few days off my life. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And that's what I hear more often than not. And I think for those reasons, Billy, many appraisers out there will I want to get this out of my life as fast as I can. I want to get it's killing me. It's literally killing me. So if I can sign an agreed order and just take a class and I'm done, it's out of my life, then I'll do that. Where do I sign? And that's not always the best decision, because while you think that's going to get out of your life now, as you mentioned earlier, now on every application you submit, you gotta say, yep, I had a complaint. Yep, I was disciplined. And it may affect you in the future. So we really need to make a conscientious decision before we decide which way to go with this. So thank you for sharing that, though. Let's ask another couple of questions here. Michael H. says, so why did he sue everybody? Who made the complaint? I'm not sure of that question. Who did you sue? Did you sue everyone, or did you just sue the complainant? And you might not be at liberty to tell us.
It's a touchy subject. But first of all, in the state of Tennessee, you can either submit your name on the complaint, or you can be anonymous. In this particular case, the complainant mentioned his name,
okay,
or her name, and Bryan, help me out here. There's only so much I can say. Let's just say that there are other parties that were involved in the trend.
Yeah. So let me help you out here a little bit. So for our viewers watching, and I know you're eager, you want to know all the facts, but unfortunately, Billy's settlement included a confidentiality agreement. So there's only so much he can say. And first of all, I want to thank Billy, and I'll thank you again at the end of this, but this is a big deal that Billy's on this broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, because he doesn't have to be. All right. Yeah. This isn't helping Billy at any point. This was such a positive outcome that I encourage Billy. I think people would like to hear your story. I think this would be good for the appraisal community to know, hey, here's one of our very own that was in a horrible situation that many appraisers find themselves in. And it ended on such a positive note. He took up for himself. He stood up for himself. He faced the complaint head on. We got that out of his life. And then he went on the proactive and said, by gosh, I'm gonna not retaliate, but I'm going to defend myself. I want to recoup some of these things. You guys have impacted my life, and you didn't have a just cause for doing that. And I'm going to be proactive on that. So it's a home run for Billy. And to me, it's a home run for the appraisal community. Billy is very limited on how much detail he can give. So about suing everyone and who he sued and whatnot, we're probably going to have to just leave that alone from this point on. But he did take up for himself, and that's really the story here. Doug says, how about a competing appraiser's complaint? They are clearly not an intended user. So, Doug, I'll see if I can answer that, and Steve, you might be able to help me here. Anybody can file a complaint on anybody at any time for any reason, I think, in most states, okay? Some states will allow that to be anonymous. Some states won't. But you don't have to be an intended user. Now, some of these other folks, Chronic, that someone up earlier talked about, Helen. Cooper versus Bacora, talking about the borrower was not an intended user. That's probably more for civil or criminal. I'm not sure, but it's not from regulatory, because anybody can file a complaint. In fact, I had an attorney ask me one time, why is this entity even getting to file a complaint? Because they weren't the client, they weren't an additional intended user. And in a lot of professional arenas, that wouldn't be able to happen. But in our arena, it can. Steve, has that been your experience? Anybody can file a complaint against anybody in most jurisdictions?
Correct. There are some exceptions. Like you said, some states won't allow an anonymous complaint.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you receive the complaint, in most states, you'll see who it is who filed it.
Right.
But there are some that will allow anonymous complaints. And that, of course, brings up issues about, some people are concerned that it's going to just become a war against your rivals. I'll file a complaint against my biggest competition. And where does that arms race end?
Right.
One thing I should mention, though, about the agreed final order that you brought up earlier, even if you decide with, whoever's helping you, an attorney or a consultant, that maybe that's the route to go, it's still negotiable. In most states, you can still negotiate for what that order is going to be. And so just don't necessarily just accept whatever it is they're offering you. You can still say, wait a minute, maybe there was some wrongdoing, but what you're talking about is way too harsh of a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure people knew that. Each state has guidelines that they have to follow by the subcommittee, but each state does it differently.
Right. So Doug from California, Doug says, California does not disclose the complaint or the complainant. How did Bryan find out who and why? And that probably question is for Billy, but that's okay. So Billy's was not anonymous. They knew who the complainant was, as he mentioned. If you're in a state where they allow for anonymous complaints and you're wanting to maybe become proactive, that's where you would need to utilize the services of an attorney. More than likely, there is some sort of path that you can figure out who filed the complaint. And my suggestion would be to talk to a good attorney on that. They may have to start subpoenaing the bank's records or who had access to that. There's probably a way to find that out, but that's a legal question. Doug and Steve, I'll leave this up to you if you want to ask this. He said that he had actually had a conversation with you. It seems defending oneself may be a grave error. Why? So, and I'll let you
I think
answer.
for all the stuff we mentioned before, I think having never been through it, most appraisers haven't been through it. You just don't know the lay of the land. You don't know the options available to you. You don't know your rights. You don't know how to navigate the process. And like Billy said, he initially came up with, an initial response. He talked to two people in the know, and they're both like, well, let's change this up a bit. So having experience, just like you have to have competency to complete an appraisal or to even accept the assignment. You would want someone with competency to, defend yourself through this process. And unless you've been through it many times before, you probably don't have that competency.
Yeah. So I like to shoot, I'm a shooter. And in fact, I was in Nashville Monday at Appraisal eLearning doing a little work, and Doug, hey Doug and I went over to the indoor range, and we rattled off some 9mm rounds and had a good time, and only jammed up my magazine a couple of times. But Doug got to shoot his new gun, and that was a fun time, Doug. So thanks for going over there with me. We had a good time in Nashville shooting. That's how we spent our lunch hour. So that was fun. But in one of the handgun courses I took, the instructor, who was a police officer, said, if Steve's coming at me with a knife and he said, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, and I have to take my gun and stop that threat. When the police officers arrive at that scene, I'm not going to talk. And I found that very bizarre, Steve. Here's a police officer saying, I'm not going to say a word. And so what do you predict the police officers are going to do? They're going to put some nice shiny bracelets on me and take me downtown. But this was his point. I just shot somebody. Okay. I'm going to be very emotional. I'm going to be stressed. I'm going to be distraught. And my point is this: I'm probably not going to speak as eloquently as an attorney representing me would, because I have all this emotional stress I'm under. Now, I don't think I did anything wrong. I think I was justified in what I was doing. But when the police say anything you say can and will be used against you, they mean that. All right. So I'll just say this to all our appraisers watching: anything they find in your work file can and will be used against you. All right. Anything they find or don't find in your appraisal report that should be there or shouldn't be there will be brought up. So that's why you probably need someone that's going to speak a little bit more eloquently than you. Now, if you want to certainly defend yourself and go down that path, then that's a business decision. You could certainly do that. A couple more questions, guys, and then I know I'm holding you over on time, and I apologize for that. Michael said, what info is public court filing? I think that we need to save that one for our attorneys. And then Michael also said, so what theory did Billy sue the complainer or complainant? Billy, can you? I don't know if you can share that or not. Your attorney. Yes. Upon what theory did you sue the person that filed a complaint against you?
Loss of income.
Okay, there you go, Michael. Loss of income. You know, Billy said when he got that complaint, you know, for the first 2 days he couldn't even work. So he wasn't working. It can cost you a client. It can cost you. It could be a potential future loss of income. Every new application. Have you ever had a complaint filed? I didn't say, have you ever been disciplined? Have you ever had a complaint filed? He's going to have to say yes to that. Have you ever been disciplined? He can say no to that one, right? But there are entities out there that don't even go that far. They say, have you ever had a complaint filed? Doesn't matter if you've had 7 complaints filed. The question is, what was the results of those complaints, right? Hey guys, thank you very much for being here. This is always a very sensitive topic. It's a scary topic. A lot of appraisers have found themselves in Billy's shoes. I get calls all the time, and I do provide consulting service on that. But a lot of times I'll just get a quick call. And I had a gentleman in my class the other day. He was taking a class, and he was there to satisfy a disciplinary issue. You know, he just took the agreed order. So be careful with that. But thank you guys for being here. Billy, thank you for sharing your story. Steve, thank you for writing an article about this topic in Working RE. We appreciate your contributions. If somebody wants to get out and reach out and touch you, and Billy maybe want to interview you or talk to you a little bit more detail in your story, how could they reach out to you?
It's your appraiser .tn@gmail.com, or just simply call me. I'll take your phone call. 423-599-9617.
Great. And Steve, for you as well, thank you again for your article. Thank you for being here today. If somebody wants to talk to you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And Billy, that is a great story. I wish I would have heard it sooner. Something that I know a few people who probably could have benefited from that perspective. The best way to reach me is by email, steve@ghaa.net.
Very good. Well, thank you again, Steve. Thank you again, Billy. We'd love to have you back on the program another time. I know we talked about there's so many topics, and you know the nice thing about today's broadcast, and we as Steve said earlier, you know, we had Jim Park on, we've had John Brennan on, we have Craig Capella on. He's a regular featured guy. Tim Anderson. We have a lot of folks on this broadcast. Today we have 2 folks on this broadcast that are practicing appraisers. I mean, they're out there every day doing appraisals, just like the majority of you watching. And I love the opportunity to have these folks on. So thank you guys for being on. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Appraisal Report Webinar, brought to you once a month by Appraiser eLearning. I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. And listen, I'm going to hold Ben over for 15 more minutes. So you got 15 more minutes. We did a special thing today that we've never done. They're probably saying, Bryan, shut up. But we've done something today that we've never done before. We're offering the biggest discount we offer is a 20% discount. It's rarely ever offered. You have to use the code BLUE7. And that code is compliments of Billy and Steve today. Blue's his favorite color and 7 is Steve's favorite number. So we just put those together, and BLUE7 will get you a 20% discount on any of our courses today, or on a couple of courses. If you want more than one, go in and secure that. You got about 14 minutes left. We'll hold it over for another 14 minutes, so be sure you capitalize on that. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Bryan Reynolds. Have a great week.